Story 1. The Regular at Pump 3. Dry Creek, New Mexico. Dry Creek was a two-exit whisper pinned to a map, a place held together by dust and habit, where the only light after midnight came from the buzzing marquee of Zeke's Gas and Market and the cold, lunar wash of the pump canopy. The moths did their stupid holy dances, the soda fridge hummed like a faraway choir, and every night in October, the same man pulled in at 11 a.m. sharp. Pump 3. He always drove the same bone-white sedan with a sun-crazed clear coat and a single cracked taillight. He never aged, never rushed, never took off the sunglasses, even at night. He'd lift the nozzle like it remembered him, swipe a battered card that squeaked the same little decline, then approve song, and fuel until the pump clicked a tidy $20. He'd nod at the window where I sat first shift, last chance with my textbooks and Sour Patch fingers, and say the same two words, just passing. The first week, I thought it was cute. The second week, I told a coworker in the group chat and got the same replies we always gave each other to make the night less empty. LOL, creepypasta. The third week, I started collecting tiny scraps about him. The smell a little like motel soap and colder air, like he carried winter in his pockets. The way the LED canopy flickered when he pulled under, every time. The sunglasses that threw back the station like a funhouse mirror until I felt like I was looking at a version of myself inside them. Smaller, more tired, neon pale. On Halloween, Dry Creek put out its big charm offensive. A cardboard skeleton, taped to the lottery case, candy corn discount. Someone's grandma crocheting a ghost and zip tying it to the air pump. I showed up with an extra hoodie and a playlist heavy on synths and Freeway Midnight. At 12:09, I stood and stretched like I did before exams. At 12:11, the sedan slid in without headlights, Pump 3 taking him like a memory. He swiped. Decline approve. The digital read rattled to $20, like the station was winding the clock. I watched the security monitor. The feed lagged by a breath, then two. For exactly 5 frames, there was no man at Pump 3, just the nozzle hanging from the air, fuel ticking into a hole that wasn't there. I scratched my wrist until it bloomed. Went outside. Hey, I said, because sometimes young adults are brave in the exact wrong way. You've been out here all month. Just passing. Where from? He smiled in that thin motel room way that says you already know. He gestured with the nozzle toward the black seam of the interstate, wherever the road starts. The canopy light fluttered, the moths all lifted at once like a bad thought. In the face of the sunglasses, I saw the convenience store behind me, gum racks, nail clippers on a lazy rack, the jerky-like tan smiles and me in it, the window ghost, the person who had to be there for other people to keep pretending the country kept running at night. I saw myself 5 Halloweens ago in a hoodie that still smelled like apartment laundry, 5 Halloweens from now in a different hoodie that still smelled like the same machine. It felt like standing on a moving walkway and realizing you're not moving at all. You paying cash? I asked, and hated the smallness of the script. He cocked his head. You're new. I've been here 3 months. New, he said, not unkind, like he meant alive. The pump clicked. He didn't top off. He never topped off. I said, because the night sometimes wants you to knock on its wall. What happens if you buy 21? His smile went crooked, finally human. You won't like it. When he left, I wrote $21 on a post-it and slapped it to the register. The store felt like an aquarium with its lights wrong. I stood there for exactly 60 seconds, then I ripped the note down because I am a coward and because I am smart and because you can be both. The next night, 12:11, the sedan glided under the canopy except I wasn't at the register. I was at Pump 3, waiting with a wad of 20s and a look I hoped carried. I'll comp it, I lied. I'll put $1 over. Let me see what breaks. The moths did that dumb holy dance. Somewhere on the highway, a big truck downshifted like a sea monster clearing its throat. He considered me through those mirrors. Up close, the sunglasses weren't a brand. They were the flat emptiness of TV screens when the broadcast ends. You sure? He asked, and the way he asked said he'd watched this moment 1,000 times through glass. Yeah. He handed me the nozzle like it was a knife. I squeezed once, 1 second over, and the pump coughed to sound like a cassette fast-forwarding to the part you didn't earn yet. The LED price jumped to $21, then blinked into letters that weren't letters. You. The canopy lights went all the way out, everything strobing and generator dark. In the windows, the store wasn't the store. It was a different counter with a different coffee maker, a version of me older and older, each me stacked like transparency sheets, marked up with different pens, pay rent, call mom, don't forget to lock the propane cage, try not to be alone forever in a town that can't remember your last name. Behind me, something moved that was not the highway, not the night. A long, low drone like wind through a pipe became a sound like the interstate saying a word, stay. I dropped the nozzle. Gasoline haloed the concrete, reflecting the red open sign like blood that had learned to spell. The man caught the nozzle, easy, patient, old as a habit. He clicked it back on the cradle and wiped the handle with a pocket tissue as if that was part of the ritual. You won't like it, he said again, and the smile then was full and tired. Trust me. Who are you? Just passing, he said, but he said it like a promise, like an instruction. Then he did something he'd never done. He took off the sunglasses. There was nobody under them. Not sockets, not void, not CGI, just no one. Like a photo that hadn't developed yet. Behind the lenses, I saw Pump 3 reflected back and back and back, the same night repeating on a loop so the town wouldn't notice how the days were dying. He put the glasses back on and my stomach dropped back into place because the world prefers its fictions tidy. Tell Zeke to change the canopy bulb, he said, and it might have been a kindness and it might have been nothing. And he might have said it to me every night for however long I'll stand in fluorescent light and pretend money is a story that keeps us safe. He drove away without headlights. The moths settled. The pump display returned to $20 like waking up. At 12:13, my phone buzzed. The group chat. Dude, the guy in the sunglasses? I typed what everyone always types when the night wants a witness. Just passing. And then because I wanted one different thing on my ledger, one small human refusal, I shut off Pump 3 and flipped the little plastic barrier over the slot that held its receipt paper. The printer whirred, printing nothing. Somewhere out on the highway, the white sedan drifted in a lane that had never changed. I worked till dawn. I went home to a cheap apartment with thin walls where someone else's life scratched and murmured and laughed through drywall. When I fell asleep, I dreamed a clean $20 and woke with a dime under my tongue. On November 1st, the canopy bulb didn't flicker. At 12, 11, nobody came. Some nights are mercies, some are just intermissions. Story 2. Empty seat, full tank, Larkspur, Kansas. The downtown stop clung to the edge of Larkspur like a sticker half peeled. A single bay, 4 pumps, a wind-tattered flag that snapped like a dog on a chain. The clerk's stool had its own groove. The coffee tasted like it had been a tree in the morning. The radio played 2 stations at once, country and a preacher, both insisting in different ways that everything was going to be okay. At 1:03 a.m. on Halloween, a silver sedan rolled up to Pump 1 and idled. The lights were on, the wipers did a ceremonial pass, and no one sat behind the wheel. You tell yourself the obvious things. Someone ran in to pee. Someone forgot to park. Someone is filming you for a prank compilation where clerks improvise dignity. Hello? I called, because sometimes you still practice politeness in case the world is secretly scoring you. I grabbed the bat from under the counter, not because I'm brave, but because I'm not, and stepped into the cold, hard light. The driver's seat was bone dry. The floor mat was clean in a way that said rental. A faint seatbelt chime tongued the air, like a nervous tick. In the back seat, an empty booster seat sat belted and proper, its fabric patterned with cartoon rockets and the kind of stars that have 5 points and no heat. The fuel door popped itself open like a wink. Nope, I said out loud, because you can set boundaries with objects. I looked up at the security camera like it was a friend. The pump accepted a card tap that wasn't mine. The display read, authorized. The nozzle lifted itself halfway, then waited, polite as a hand you hadn't shaken yet. From inside the sedan, the radio woke without turning on, a low whisper like heat. Words slowly organized. Continue route, continue route, continue. I'm calling this in, I said to the empty world, which is one way to keep a shred of control. The sheriff's line rang twice and bounced to a recorded voice, promising someone would be right with me. And then the other station on the radio inside the empty car said, right with you back at the exact same time, and I hung up because someone was already right with me. The nozzle took itself. Gasoline went into the car. The pump clicked. Not the soft full tank click, but an old cassette ending hard. The receipt printer fed itself and spit a paper tongue. Larkspur rental paid in full, thank you, Jenna. The booster seat stared with cartoon astronauts that had somewhere to be. On the dash, a GPS unit glowed with a route that never named a road, just a pulsing dot labeled home. When I turned the unit toward me, the map rotated, and the dot moved to wherever I stood, always just out ahead, always home a little past anywhere you could get. A thin handprint bloomed in fog on the inside of the windshield, where there had been no breath. "Okay," I said, and heard my voice go smaller, like when you're talking to a toddler who is doing something unacceptable in public. "We don't do that, all right?" The wipers licked the glass clean. I leaned into the open driver's door. The smell made my eyes burn, not rot, not gasoline. Winter. The sterile ozone of brand new mittens. The cold plastic of sleds. An engine hum under the hum, like an older motor idling somewhere far under this one. The radio spoke in my voice. "Okay." I swallowed. "Who are you?" Route resuming. The sedan slid itself into park, then out again, then into neutral, like it was flipping through its options. I put my foot on the brake with the kind of intimacy you don't plan, and the whole machine shivered like something warm leaning back into a palm. "Do you need help?" I asked, and hated the instant ache behind the question because wanting to help is how the night takes pieces. The hazard lights bloomed, the booster seat's rocket ships went nowhere, the pump clicked again. The price climbed $2 with no fuel flowing, then printed a second receipt. Tip, plus $2, for your trouble. The font was too cheerful. A little smiley face typed itself under the total and looked proud of its own manners. The GPS said home, and, this time, it sounded like a promise and a threat. I got in. I don't know why. Maybe because some of us are moths, and some of us are porch lights, and some nights reverse the currents. Maybe because a 30-year-old in Larkspur, Kansas with loans and a schedule and a playlist of comfort noises is the kind of animal that still thinks forward motion solves everything. I put my hand on the wheel. It was cold enough to sting. I buckled the seatbelt, and it clicked with a child's satisfaction. "Take me home," I said, and it didn't sound like me at all. The car moved. It moved like memory moves. The world out the windshield went black to gray too. A cutout of a town you could name but that never quite consented to be Larkspur. The station slid left and right like a stage flat. The GPS dot stayed home and kept just ahead like it was teasing me through the kind of game where you end up back where you started with lighter pockets. We drove for an hour, maybe 10 minutes. Time becomes a big shrug when roads don't mean what they did when you were small. The sign for downtown stop appeared in the distance. The sedan braked without being told. It turned into the lot with slower reverence than a car owes anyone. It eased to pump one. It shuddered, and then every light died at once. I sat in the dark with my breath until the clock returned to its numbers. When I got out, my own handprint appeared on the windshield in the exact place the other one had, like we had briefly agreed on the same world. The receipt printer coughed one last time. "Thank you. Route complete. Happy Halloween. No name, no signature." The booster seat stared. The GPS went black. The engine didn't tick as it cooled, because it didn't need to. I backed away, because that is what you do when you have no ritual for something. The wind picked up. The flag snapped. Its dog snap. I turned the bat in my hand and put it back under the counter and poured out coffee that had been a tree this morning and was now something that had done its job. At 1:40, the sheriff pulled up with her overheads, doing the low circus. I told her what I could tell. She tapped the plate. The system blinked. No record. She wrote "unknown silver sedan" on a pad and sighed like a script she'd gotten tired of delivering. "Everything good, kid?" "Yeah," I said, because kid is what you answer for. "Just passing." I didn't take any more receipts from Pump 1 that night. When I locked up at dawn, the car was gone. When I got home, my apartment smelled faintly of winter. On my kitchen counter sat a paper cup of hot chocolate with a lid, still warm, with a smiley face sharpied on the top. It shouldn't have been possible. I took one sip because we are animals built for small bravery. It tasted like the kind of cocoa you get after the sledding hill, the cheap powder kind that still installs joy. I cried the way you cry when you remember having been safely cold and correctly tired a long time ago, and then I slept like roads mean the things we pay them to mean. On my next shift, I taped a note inside the register. If the car comes back, ask about the booster seat. I don't know whose question it was. I don't know whose answer I wanted. Story 3. Out of Order, Pine Ferry, Louisiana. The bathroom door at Bayou Quick had a hand-lettered sign with the same red Sharpie for as long as anyone in Pine Ferry could remember. Out of order. No one peeled it off, not even when the city did surprise inspections, not even when tourists begged, because the next station was 20 miles of cypress and black water, and one curve that kept taking people whose GPS thought the bayou was polite. We had another bathroom for customers. This one we didn't. I did nights because I liked being the person inside the glow, because the dark outside meant I was lighting something real, because school felt like a prank adults were playing on the tired. My manager Martha had a rule. If the out-of-order door knocked, you turn up the radio. If the out-of-order door whispered, you turn up the radio more. On Halloween, I worked alone. The mosquitoes made the fluorescents look haunted. The freezer breathed fog when I opened it for another bag of ice. At 1:13 a.m., someone knocked on the out-of-order door. 3 knocks, polite, like a neighbor who had to ask for sugar. I cranked the radio to Zydeco. The smell that came under the door was not sewage. It was wet map, the thick tannin of old paper, the scent of the bayou when lightning is a rumor. Sorry, I yelled, the way you apologize to strangers for a building's failings. Use the other one, round the side. The door knocked again, a little more desperate, and then again. The rhythm going ragged like someone underwater, trying to remember music. The wall vent rattled. The tape on the out-of-order sign lifted and lay back down, lifted and lay back down like breath. I grabbed the key, the one shaped like an alligator head on a stick, and went out with bravado like it came with the apron. You can't use this one. I started, and then the door whispered my name. Not in a spooky kid voice, in my manager Martha's voice, exactly right. Jules. I froze. The trick of every night shift is that you live alone inside your own head, and it is not always a place you want to live. The handle jiggled. Jules, the door said. Martha's voice worn through like an old t-shirt. Sweetheart, can you open please? Martha was home, asleep. I knew because we texted about a coupon book 10 minutes ago, and she said night with a heart emoji she reserves for relatives, and when the saints do okay. Sweetheart, the door said again, and then quieter. Stand where you are. I did. My mouth forgot to make spit. Something scraped inside the door like a shoe slowly turning. The vent whined a note too high for a recording. The door unlocked itself. The sign didn't change. Out of order stared like a command you give a body when it is grieving. I didn't open it. You don't have to be a final girl to know when ritual is happening. You don't have to believe in anything to recognize when a thing believes back. Not tonight, I told the door. Please. And I wasn't begging the door. I was begging the night. The knob flicked anyway, and the door creaked a slim smile, and a draft pushed out that smelled like Road Atlas and Time and the kind of bathroom cleaner they don't sell anymore because it worked too well and left ghosts. Inside, the out-of-order bathroom was not a bathroom. It was a little room bigger than the footprint allowed, a square carved into the bayou's memory. Wet maps covered the walls, the kind your granddad kept folded until they cracked at the county lines. Red Pen had traced the same short route over and over from Pine Ferry to nowhere to Pine Ferry again. The sink bled rust like a wound that understood theater. The mirror was not a mirror, it was a window. On the other side of the glass, a road at night ran on forever, with our canopy light floating above it like a star that had gotten bored. There was someone in the stall. I knew because I could see their shoes beneath a pair of green rubber boots with dried river across them, toes pointed inward the way shy people stand in line. They weren't casting a shadow. Jules, Martha's voice said from the stall, but the voice was older, thinner, like it had been sent through copper too many miles. He needs to go home. Who? The toilet paper unrolled a little by itself, then rolled back. The stall door shook like a heartbeat behind wood. The vent breathed shh, because vents are rude. The mirror window showed a car coming down the road, the same silver sedan from Larkspur, unless all empty cars looked like siblings. It approached. It did not arrive. It kept being, just about to. Jules, the stall said. Ask them to stand where they are. I don't like this, I told it, the way you tell a hurricane that it is being inconsiderate. We don't do this. The hand that slid under the stall door wore no ring in all the tenderness. It placed the key on the tile, the old brass kind with teeth like a skyline. The key had Bayou Quick stamped on it with a tool nobody taught anymore. The hand receded. I didn't see a shadow for it either. I picked up the key. It was warm like it had been held by someone alive long enough to give it that. What does it open? I asked, feeling stupid, feeling too young. feeling the particular humiliations of being modern when the past demands station IDs. The door whispered exactly like Martha, saying the other bathroom. And then, like a tiny mercy, "Sweetheart." I stepped out of the out-of-order bathroom. I locked it. I hung the key on the hook, where we keep the other one. I went around the side and unlocked the customer bathroom with Martha's key, the other bathroom, and held the door and waited because the night likes it when you show willing. No one came. Of course no one came. The radio found Zydeco again. When I got back to the counter, a man stood there with River on his boots. He had the face of a person who had been crying cleanly, not messily. He set down a road atlas in a Ziploc bag. "Out of order," he said in a voice like a house with the windows open, and pushed the atlas toward me. "I don't want it," I said before my mouth could ask what price sorrow runs at in this parish. "It's yours," he said, and he said it without any of the little pressures. He tapped the bag. "Page 62. Will help you someday, maybe." It showed me my loop. I didn't take it. He left it anyway, which is how gifts sometimes happen. He went out into the dark and turned right, and the canopy light made a halo that couldn't possibly follow him but did. At 1:40, the out-of-order door knocked once, softly. I turned up the radio. I held the atlas. I waited like someone in a chapel waits for whatever they came for to admit it's not coming. At dawn, Martha came in, and the world reset to breakfast gravity. I told her the wall vent was rattling again, and she said, "Baby, the vent always rattles," and made coffee that tasted like brown water and love. Before I clocked out, I opened the atlas to page 62 because I'm the kind of animal who looks. It was Pine Ferry. See also, Pine Ferry, unincorporated. Someone, not me, had traced a red line from Bayou Quick to a dot on the bayou with no name. Next to it in block letters, return path. I put the atlas under the counter. I put the out-of-order key on a nail by the clock where I could see it. On Halloween night, you try to make small changes that mean bigger in your own head. We never opened the out-of-order bathroom again. We never removed the sign. It looks bossy and looks like love. That's Pine Ferry. That's the world. Sometimes at 1:13 I go stand by the door and listen. Sometimes I hear rinsed hands, the sigh of a paper towel torn right on the perforation. Sometimes the mirror breathes. Sometimes a car approaches in a place where roads decide they owe us nothing. I don't open it. I don't need to. I just stand where I am. Story 4. Sweet Fuel, Marrow Ridge, West Virginia. The fuel at Marrow Ridge Junction smelled wrong the night the tanker came. Diesel's got that big animal reek. Regular with ethanol smells like pennies and lawn. This smelled like cut grass in a hospital, like someone had mopped the meadow. I signed the handheld because that's the game. The driver didn't make small talk. He wore a company jacket with no company on it and a face that had been ironed to neutrality. His clipboard had a line for octane that someone had filled in with seasonal and a checkmark shaped like a crow. "New blend?" I asked, the way you tip your head at an unfamiliar dog. "Pilot program," he said, and his voice had mileage. "Burns cleaner. Customers won't notice. They always notice. They won't," he said again, and the way he said it made me believe he could will reality into obedience. He pumped the tanks. The canopy lights did their small seizures. The night felt very interested in what we were doing. First customer after the drop was a guy with a lifted truck and a flag that wanted to fight at stoplights. He filled on the new stuff and revved twice for the crowd that wasn't there. He pulled away and I could hear his radio under the motor. A woman speaking calmly through a lot of static, telling him the exact route he was already on, saying his name like she was being careful where she put it. Second was a mom in a van with kids making the kind of noise that says the day had been long but survivable. She fueled, buckled, drove to the edge of the lot and stopped. She sat there idling. Then she turned around and came back and parked and stared at the pump like she had left a baby on top of the roof. She rolled down her window and said, "I have to use your bathroom," with tears just sitting pretty in her voice. And I let her, and when she came out, she stood with both palms on the hood and said thank you to the van like it had tried not to let her die. By midnight, people were filling more often than they should have needed. The pumps clicked and then clicked again like appetites. The price didn't change faster than it should, but the feel of the air did. The junction felt fed. I took a mason jar and drew a sample from the sight glass, because you can be young and still know your ghosts. In the jar, the new fuel wasn't exactly liquid. It was a vent. It looked like summer heat shivering above a road. It smelled like mown grass and waiting rooms, and something you thought you left in a childhood backpack, and just found again, a note that says, I owe you, in your own handwriting. I set the jar on the back desk, and it quivered without moving. Behind me, the radio tuned itself to a station we didn't get. A man laughed once, then said, "Stand where you are," Dev, in a voice that was tired and kind. I don't have a Dev. That's not a Merrill Ridge name. But the fuel jar understood him, or the pumps did, or the night did. The tanker driver came back around 12:40, like he'd swung a loop and wanted to see if we'd passed his little test. He walked a lot, hands in pockets, nodding as if the pumps greeted him specifically. "How's she run?" "She?" I asked, because a gas station is a wife to a lot of men who never deserved one. "The town," he said. "She feel good?" "You put something in the tank that isn't gas." He tipped his chin. "I put something in that empties easy." The mason jar thrummed. A miller moth threw itself at the canopy bulb like it wanted to worship or die or both. A kid on a dirt bike rolled through without fueling, just did a loop like a dog checking a fence, and left, and came back, and left, and came back. And his face looked calm, and lost the way kids look when they don't know they're crying. "What is it?" I asked. "What you pay for when you run out of courage," he said. And maybe he didn't say that. Maybe the new blend said it through his mouth. I picked up the jar. It was warm. It had a pulse. "How do you stop it?" "You don't," he said. Pleasant. Like a weather report. It runs through. It returns. It feeds. It burns very clean. Everyone sleeps. Everyone sleeps? Eventually, he said. Like a promise. Like a threat. A station is a set of choices hidden in chores. I shut down pumps 2 and 4, the 2 on the new blend. I taped out of service signs over the card readers with blue painter's tape, because something about the neatness felt holy. I put orange cones in front like small hats of refusal. The tanker driver watched with an interest that wasn't unkind but also wasn't on my side. "You'll lose business," he said. "Merrill Ridge will walk if it has to." He smiled then, and it was a small human thing that made me feel worse. That's not the kind that walks. We stood there listening to the difference between the pumps I'd closed and the pumps I hadn't. The open pumps breathed. The closed ones listened. A sedan rolled in, not silver this time, a color I don't know the word for weather. The driver sat a long time like he had to negotiate with every bone to move. He got out, and the sound the door made was a door sound, and also something making an argument. He chose pump 2, one of my closed ones. He stared at my cone. His hand shook. He looked at me with gratitude like I'd saved him from a kind of obedience. "Thanks," he said, voice shredded. "It keeps telling me it's empty." "Not tonight," I said, and felt the words, "Wear uniform." He swallowed. He drove off slower than a person wants. The canopy lights dimmed like they were trying to make less room for the moths. The tanker driver put his hands in his pockets deeper, then deeper again like a man fishing for the pocket with the key to a door you can't just close. "You sure?" he asked. "What is it?" I said again, and this time I put my hand on the jar, and it whispered home in the way a thing whispers when it doesn't mean your house. The fuel wanted to be in a belly. Any belly. "A seasonal," he said. "It's what you pour when you want people to stop looking past their own lives. It smells like a memory and burns like forgetting." I thought of my dad's hand on my head in the driveway in 10th grade saying, "We ain't leaving Merrill Ridge," and the way that landed in my bones. I thought of how many people came through at 2 a.m. Tonight, to top off, nothing, because nothing feels safer when it's been measured and paid for. I unscrewed the jar cap. The scent hit me: cut grass, antiseptic, pleasure in small things, the clean interior of a new pill bottle. I walked to the edge of the lot and poured the new blend into the ditch where the kudzu plays at Conquest. The leaves shivered like someone had whispered a joke only they got. The fuel soaked into the red West Virginia dirt, and the smell got bigger and then left like a polite guest. The jar kept pulsing even empty. The tanker driver watched me without anger and without approval. "Won't matter," he said after a while. "Underground tanks are hungry. You can close pumps. You can't close ground. Watch me," I said, and was surprised how my voice made the moths change orbit. I shut the station down at 1:10 a.m. on Halloween, an offense for which Zeke would have baked me hollow if I'd had a Zeke. I killed the canopy and let the dark put its cool hands on everything. The tanker driver stood in the dark like a man on a dock listening to water do the math. In the quiet, I heard the town. I don't mean traffic. I mean the big animal of Merrill Ridge turning in its sleep. The pumps made that soft little tick they do as they cool, and then they stopped, and then the ground settled with a sigh that wasn't geological. At 118, a breeze moved. The smell was just gasoline, the honest kind that sings in your blood and makes you see high school parking lots. The jar in my hand went cool and quiet, like a thing that had passed the test and wasn't embarrassed. When the tanker driver left, he didn't say goodbye. He gave me a look that was a eulogy and a benediction. His taillights never showed red. They showed some other color men used to have a word for. People came in the morning and filled and went on with their lives. And some of them came back because their lives are built that way, and some didn't because theirs aren't. The EPA never came, because nothing catastrophic happened. The only evidence of the new blend was a circle of kudzu behind Bay 3 that turned a greener green like envy had taught it a trick. Months later, a letter arrived on cheap paper. Congratulations, pilot complete Marrow Ridge Junction ops out. No company listed. No signature. I taped it to the break room fridge with blue painter's tape. Sometimes the night asks you to choose how you're fed. Sometimes you say no without a speech, and the ground goes on loving you anyway. Story 5. Mile marker 0 Oxbow, Nevada. The loop and larder sat where the highway kinked like a broken arm. Oxbow wasn't a town so much as a rumor locals kept alive by habit and nostalgia. The desert there had that lunar thing, silver where it should be black, patient where it should be cruel. At 2:02 a.m. on Halloween, a traveler came in shaking salt from his hair like a swimmer. He had that look people get when they try to leave the desert after midnight. Baked eyes, big pupils, a map of dehydration drawn in fine red lines at the lip. "Fill on 2, he said. "Card inside." His teeth chattered like the AC had new ideas. He went back out, and I watched him through glass and bugs. He fueled, he got in. He drove to the lot's mouth and turned left onto the highway, and the night swallowed him without complaint. I went back to my Sudoku, because that's the UA, the universe rewards clerks who don't start trouble. At 2:19 a.m., he pulled in again. Same approach, same lane, same shoulder shrug of a car that wanted to pretend it hadn't done exactly this. He fueled, he drove out, and the night took him again. At 2:36 he pulled in, again, for a third time. He came in without meeting my eyes and put his car down and said, "Pump 2." And I broke customer service and said, soft like you talk to a trapped dog, "Man, you just, I know." He said, swallowing, "Road loops, GPS is drunk, podcasts keep restarting." He held up his phone with the word play lit on an episode he downloaded about confidence and entrepreneurship. It had 21 minutes left. It had 21 minutes left every time. He laughed with no joy. "I'll try the other direction." He fueled and turned right this time. And the desert said sure, the way a magician says sure when he already has your watch. At 2:51, pulled in. Again. He looked at me like I had a power to grant permissions I don't possess. "Pump 2, he said, and then, in an act of religion, "Please, we invented rituals on the fly." I had him circle the building 3 times clockwise, then counterclockwise, because the mind likes symmetry. I made him drink 2 full bottles of water in front of me, because the body likes to be asked to stay. I loaded him up with a Slim Jim and a banana, because horror is worse on an empty stomach. I gave him the good flashlight, and the heavy one that makes you feel like you have done a push-up. He turned left. He turned right. He did the thing where you go straight, like you're angry at the horizon. He came back. By the 4th loop, the asphalt remembered his tires. The dust on his bumper told its own little story in continuous cursive. The windshield had a smear shaped like a hand where his hand wasn't. "Listen," I said, and leaned on the counter with the intimacy of 2 strangers riding the same elevator down. "Leave the car." He shook his head. "No. Take the flashlight. Walk. I'll keep you on the line." I lifted the landline and held it like a lifeline, because that's what it pretends to be. Go past the edge of the canopy light. Keep going. Don't look back. When the line gets too tight, say a name. Any name. I'll say it back. He laughed, and his laugh had knives in it. "That's the dumbest thing I ever..." "Do you have a better story?" I asked. "And sometimes your mouth writes checks your soul can cover." He went out. He left his car idling. He took the flashlight. He stepped beyond the white slab of the canopy's safety. The phone cord sane as it uncoiled. He walked into the kind of dark that makes other darks look insecure. I pressed the receiver to my ear and did a stupid thing that felt like work. I murmured facts so that the world would have to decide to contradict me. His name, however, we hadn't exchanged names. The date, the number of moths beating themselves to death. In the light, there was 8. The color of the horizon if you squinted. To best describe the color, it was a bruised plum. I told him the scent of the desert right then. Electric dust. I told him the sound the beer cooler made, which sounded like a tiny glacier dying. Then, I told him the exact shape of a gas station clerk's loneliness. 2 windows creating a box. He said, in a concerned tone, "I can't hear the highway anymore." Slight panic in his voice. "That's okay," I said, reassuringly. He replied, in a slight panic, "It's supposed to be right there." I said, "Stand where you are." The line went quiet in the way lines go quiet when the person on the other end is making a decision that they'll be dead or old for. He said a name then, not mine, not his. A name with no living attached in Oxbow, not this year, not in the years anyone had on paper. A child's name, a grandparent's name. The desert took it and didn't echo it back, because that's not how desert love works. I said it back anyway. I said it back like I'd known her. I said it back like it would cost me something, and it did. The flashlight beam dwindled to an idea of a flashlight beam. The cord drew taut like a line on a kite when wind picks up over the trailer park. I could feel the night testing the give in me, how far I'd unspool, how much line I had. "I think there's a sign," he said, and I didn't ask how he could see the back of a sign and read at night with my flashlight and too much fear. "It says Pump 2. We stopped telling the truth then, because the truth was not behaving. We did what humans do. We collaborated with fear." "Turn the flashlight off," I said. He did, without hesitation. The line has a sound when the light dies, the sound of a room remembering how big it is. "Now what?" he asked. "Close your eyes," I told him. "But I already," he replied. "Close them on purpose," I told him. He did. I could hear it, the little lidded sound. I could hear his lungs decide not to fight. I could hear the desert rearrange its face with both hands. "Now turn around," I said, and the line creaked as he turned. "Open your eyes." The receiver carried the same sound a person makes when they spot something that makes sense after a wall of nonsense. The small idiot joy when a lost highway sign says the name of anywhere. "I see the canopy," he said. It's right there." "That's so stupid." I walked in a circle. "Everyone does," I said, and kept my bitterness out of it. The part of me that would always be 19 handing change to truckers, and the part that was fine with that. He came back in. He placed the flashlight on the counter like a borrowed baby. He stared at my hands like they were uncommonly good hands, or like they were very good at pretending. "Thank you," he said. "And then, I'm sorry. And then I'll try a dawn." "Dawn helps," I said. "It helps because shadows have to pick a side, because heat works like a confession." He slept slumped in a chair by the snack cakes with a bag of ice, like a cat on his knees. I made coffee that was a sin against beans. I watched the dark do its last cheap tricks, and I watched a coyote cross the lot like a resolution, and I watched Pump 2 blink a slow red I had never noticed before. At 6:13 a.m., the first light made decisions. We went outside together to prove physics still worked. He got in his car and turned the key, and the engine made a faithful sound. He drove to the mouth of the lot and turned left, and the horizon didn't eat him this time. He went straight. He got smaller. He left. The receipt printer spat one final time. Pump 2. Voided. Happy Halloween. The voided part felt like mercy and like paperwork, and like both at once. I unplugged Pump 2 for the rest of the day because it felt right, and because customers have 100 other choices, and because, sometimes, in Oxbow, you decide a thing, and then the world nods. The canopy hummed. The moths went to die somewhere respectful. People ask what keeps me in a place like this. I say, the quiet. I say, the wildflowers in April. I say, I have a dog, even though I don't. I say, I'm saving, which I am. The truth is, the Lupin larder keeps its promises. If you stand where you are, something will come home. Might be you, might be someone saying a name you should learn. I took a fat black marker and wrote mile marker 0 on the back of the no smoking sign facing Pump 2, because lies can be kindness if they are the right shape. I put the receiver back on its hook and felt the hollow in the plastic free me. I poured out the bad coffee and made worse, and stood at the window with my hands on the glass, like somebody who'd figured out a trick. At 2:02 a.m. next Halloween, a traveler came in shaking salt. We did the dance. He turned left. He turned right. He turned stubborn. He came back. I handed him the heavy flashlight. I pulled the phone cord with a magician's showmanship. "Stand where you are," I said, and the night did what the night does in Oxbow. It remembered we are clever, and that is a kind of love